Hello and welcome to episode 11 of Raising Humans. Yes, I have changed the name of the podcast for many reasons. The first was that I wanted to change it initially anyway. I was just thinking about what to change it to. The main reason was that I felt people thought it was a ripoff of Diary of a CEO. And as I mentioned in the first episode, that's where the inspiration came from. However, eventually I knew that every time someone read the name, they'd instantly associate that with the Diary of a CEO, and therefore I wanted to think of a name that would align with the purpose and the principles of this podcast and what we're trying to achieve. So the two things we're trying to achieve is, number one, to grow someone's mindset, the way they're thinking, to affect their life positively. But second is also to embed these teachings onto the next generation. And therefore raising humans has a double meaning: raising the individual, their mindsets, the way they think, but also raising and nurturing the next generation. And that was the thought process behind naming this channel. So the channel name has changed. The logo will change as well, hopefully within the next couple of days, to reflect what we're trying to do in this channel. So let's get on with the topic of today's podcast, and it's going to be about neuroplasticity. So we're going to learn about what it means. We're going to learn about the most up-to-date research on how to grow your brain. And lastly, a few analogies and experiments about neuroplasticity and the experiments that they've done. But before that, if you haven't already, please like and subscribe to this channel. It really helps me. We're on 59 subscribers right now, so I want to get to 60. So let's see if you can do that with today's episode. So without further ado, let's get into it. Neuroplasticity, what does it mean? And I've made some notes here just to make sure that what I'm saying is factually correct. So I may be referring to that throughout the video. But so what does it mean? Your brain's way of learning and growing. Imagine your brain is made up of lots of little roads or pathways, and every time you try to learn something new, your brain opens up a new pathway. And the more you do something, the smoother and faster those pathways become. So imagine initially you're walking on a path of grass. Eventually it turns into a trail, and lastly a smooth road. For you to traverse that path becomes easier and easier, and over time it becomes second nature. So Dr. Tara Swart is a neuroscientist, and she says that when she was in medical school, the belief was that after a certain age it was impossible to increase intelligence. However, today studies show that it is possible. She says that up until the age of 25, your brain is active, a lot more fluid, and therefore to increase your intelligence and to change your mindset is very, very easy. The problem comes after 25. So she says it's not impossible. However, it's a lot harder for a person to do. And therefore she'll say that for most people, up until this age, they've learned everything they need to learn. And there isn't much need for them to actively grow their brains. For example, the average person, by the age of 25, they may be at a job where they feel comfortable, they've learned everything that they need to in their work, as well as in their personal life, all the tasks that they need to do, like driving a car, for example, and therefore to force your brain to grow, that's not something that they'll need. But if you're that type of person that wants to continue to grow, actively pursuing knowledge after that age, then this will be very beneficial for you as well. So she says that we need to force our brains under intense pressure. And simply this just means that doing a task that's very difficult for you to do. And if you do that, then you will gain global benefits. So the example she gives is learning a language. That's very difficult, and it forces your brain under pressure. And if you do that, it will not only give you the benefit of learning a language, but it will improve your executive functions. So what are executive functions? These are things like regulating your emotions, being able to solve complex problems, thinking creatively, and overriding unconscious biases. These are some executive functions. She says that there are 3 ways for a person to do this. The first is called myelination. Think of this as supercharging your brain's pathways. When you practice something a lot, like a skill or a habit, your brain creates a coating called myelin around the pathways for that skill. This coating helps information travel faster and more easier, and it becomes second nature to someone. The second is called Synaptic Connection. This is about the connections between the brain cells. When you work hard or remember something, your brain creates stronger links between these two cells, and with enough effort, these connections become permanent, helping you learn and remember. The last is called neurogenesis, and this is the brain's ability to grow new cells. Here she says that a person needs to do aerobic exercises like running. It helps your brains create new cells. These fresh cells make it easier for the brains to learn and adapt to new things. To summarize, I would just say from the three things, practice something that's very difficult to do, something that you do constantly, so working hard to learn or remember something, and lastly, exercise, like running or some type of sport, aerobic exercises, and to do that continuously will help you. And even from my personal anecdotal experience, that there's a stark difference from when I was able to remember things, think critically when I wasn't training and when I was. And I found that when I started training, it became so much easier for me to think critically, to organize myself, and just to be a lot more productive in life. So she further goes on to say about visualization and how that can increase your brain cells and your brain activity as well. And she gave this very, very interesting study. So this study was done in 2015 in Birmingham University. So this study had two groups of people. The first group were people that were training every single day for 1 month. And the second group of people, they weren't training, but they were only thinking about training. So they were doing visualizations and meditating and thinking about their muscles growing. And the study, the conclusion was very, very interesting. So the first group, the one that were actually training every day, they saw a 40% increase in strength. However, the second group, they didn't lift a single weight, but after the 4 weeks of training, they saw a 13% in strength increase. And so that just shows that just thinking about something, how strong and powerful your brain is, that just by thinking about lifting weights, you can actually increase your strength or your muscle size. That doesn't mean that you never go to the gym, you just sit in your room and start thinking. It just shows that when you are training and you're also visualizing something. And it takes me back to something that I heard Arnold Schwarzenegger say, that when he was training, he used to mentally visualize his muscles growing. In between sets, he was visualizing his bicep growing. And this study just supports that. And I just made that connection when I initially listened to it. I just remember that kind of makes sense. And I'm not sure whether Arnie knew that this was the case or not, but this study supports that. It's just interesting and just shows how powerful the mind is and how it can manifest something if you're constantly thinking about it. Take from that what you will. And that brings us back to the whole reason why I looked into neuroplasticity in the first place. It was an analogy that I heard from Steve Bartlett, and he compares the mind to a bookshelf and ideas, concepts to books. And he says that when you're younger, this bookshelf is empty and you are eager to put books on this bookshelf. And these books come from parents, culture, the people around you. And you are eager to put books on there so you don't question it. But as you get older, when you find a book that contradicts what's already on the shelf, then it's a lot harder for you to place that book on that bookshelf. Firstly, there's not enough space. Your brain can only handle a certain amount of information and ideas. But secondly, if it's already contradicting something that's there, then it's harder to change it. And the only way for a person to do that is to see evidence, enough evidence that shows that the ideas already on your bookshelf or the books on your bookshelf, they're outdated and they need to change. And the easiest way to show this is an example. So when you're young, you may have an idea of saving, and that we believe that in order to become wealthy and rich, we need to accrue as much money as we can by working really hard and leaving it in your bank. And these ideas may come across from people. You see other people doing this. You see the mindset of your parents when it comes to finance, and therefore you believe this is the way. As you get older, you may come across other pieces of information. You become more financially literate, and you find out, hold on, that what I'm learning about is different to what I believed. And to become wealthy, you need to invest. And you need to see this information enough times for you to remove these outdated books of saving in a bank, because you learn about inflation and quantitative easing and how the buying power of your money decreases over time. And eventually, when you accrue enough evidence, these outdated books, you can remove them off your bookshelf and replace them with something new. So when it comes to this analogy, it makes me think more about neuroplasticity. So our ability to change and make new connections. It's easier to make new pathways in the brains, but when we get older, it becomes more difficult, and therefore we need to continue repetitively doing that action again and again to solidify these pathways. But also the role that exercise has in ensuring that your brain remains active, your intelligence is continually growing, and you are as sharp as you can ever be. Therefore, when it comes to growing your brain and intelligence, no matter how old you are, it's possible. It just takes a little effort. Thank you very much for listening to my episode today. I hope you found it beneficial, and if you haven't already, please like and subscribe to the channel. I'll see you guys next episode.